There you go. 4-punch, 5-punch, 6-punch combination. Body shot, bang, 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 bang.
Telling him not to counterpunch.
Boom! Will Rackman get up?
Iron. You're going through all the instructions. This is for the championship of the world. I expect a tough, clean fight. Protect yourself at all times. Any questions?
Welcome back, Fights fans. This is your host, Alden Chodash, joined by Jeff Fuss. We're both of the Fight City, and we're bringing you a boxing recap by way of the Fight City podcast. How are you this morning, Jeff?
Oh, I'm great. You?
I'm doing pretty well. And I think everyone but Canelo Alvarez's latest victim is feeling pretty good this morning. Callum Smith leaving the ring with looked like a grapefruit in his right bicep or left bicep, an injury I've really seldom seen before. He took a pretty bad beating last night.
Yeah, I could only imagine the pain that he's probably feeling this morning, both on his, in his torso and in that arm. When he was leaving the ring and going back to his locker room when the camera was following him, it was just swelling up on live TV. Speculation is like, did he tear a bicep? It was getting pretty huge. So I wonder what the report's going to be.
I wonder if it was a result of Canelo's just vicious assault on his torso, his upper torso throughout the fight, body, head. He was ripping some mean body shots, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was on impact with his bicep that could have torn. But we hope the best for Callum Smith, probably a layoff period for him in the near future to recover. But anyways, Canelo Alvarez just dominated the undefeated, ununified, and Ring Magazine 168-pound champion in Callum Smith. He won more or less every round in front of one of, if not the loudest post-pandemic crowds of this year in the Alamodome. I thought he looked sensational. What was your impression of Canelo's performance?
His performance reminded me of his last performance against Sergey Kovalev. Mm-hmm. Pressure fighter coming in, moving his head while ripping, just devastating. I just feel so bad for any opponent that gets in there now with Canelo. I hope they've been doing their core work, because he was ripping it to Callum Smith's midsection, and then obviously his arm was getting brutalized in the process.
Yeah,
but I thought he shined. Definitely put it in there that he can run with the big boys, and he seems so comfortable at this weight. I don't see any issues with endurance. Compared to when he was sitting at 160 or that one weird catch weight of 155.
Yeah, 154. He was developing a reputation of being a guy that might slow down the stretch, especially after his fight against Austin Trout. We don't really see that too much anymore.
Yeah, he just seems, and I guess it's also what he's telling the media. He goes, I'm comfortable at this weight. I feel okay. So it leaves me to question, will he at any point go back down to 160, or is he just going to stay at 168, possibly bump up to 175?
Yeah, he's in a unique position right now that he's an active title holder in 3 different weight divisions that are a total of 15 pounds apart, 175, 168, and 160. Not quite Henry Armstrong, who had titles at feather, lightweight, and welterweight at the same time, but still pretty impressive nonetheless. And it's fair to say that Canelo, he won a fight that he was expected to win, and many people were predicting Canelo, but what was very impressive was that few thought it would be this easy. I mean, Callum Smith was just rendered nearly useless in this fight. And he wasn't able to use his height. He wasn't able to use his size. He had a 7 to 8 inch height advantage. It really didn't mean anything. And how do you think Alvarez made it look so easy for him last night?
Whenever I see Alvarez getting in the ring with anyone, at least up until this point, I feel I cannot bet against the Mexican boxer. And Callum Smith, I was really hedging bets, thinking, all right, Callum Smith, tall, he's sharp. He does throw when he wants to throw. He can throw him in a couple bunches. But every time he threw a punch, I wasn't feeling any power behind those punches.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was just because Canelo's defense, he's either slipping or he's parrying the punches. But if anything, it looked like he was just kind of slapping at Canelo, which, that's not going to keep Canelo off of you. He's pressing forward the entire time. So I was disappointed not seeing that Callum Smith, though he did like just abandon the jab halfway through. I was like, where are your jabs at, man? You got to keep him back. But he just decided to lean back on the ropes.
His jab was almost a liability for him because he wasn't throwing it, snapping it in the way that was effectively controlling distance. The way he was throwing his jab was just he was asking for to be made a target with Canelo's sharp counter shots.
Yeah, and that was the game plan. I don't know if it was Callum Smith's decision before the fight to be, I'm gonna throw out the jab. I'm not gonna rely on it solely just because that's what everyone keeps telling me to do. Obviously, that means Canelo is going to be prepared for it, but it didn't seem like there was really any attempt to establish his jab because after round 6, it just made me wonder. He just keeps walking backwards. And you're not giving him any type of resistance. So what's stopping Canelo from just unleashing like wide looping hooks?
Yeah, I'm thinking back to Canelo's fight against Miguel Cotto, which I was watching last night, and Freddie Roach to Miguel Cotto in the early round said, this guy is just too good off the front foot. One of the reasons that Triple G was able to be effective against Canelo is that, especially in the first fight, he kept Canelo from coming forward. He kept him on the back foot and for large stretches of the fight against the ropes. And whether or not that was just a technical mistake, a tactical error, that's a different story. But Callum Smith just let Canelo fight more or less the whole fight off the front foot, which is asking for trouble and asking for Canelo to bring the best out of his arsenal.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, if Callum Smith, not leveraging his weight, he didn't even when he did attempt to wrap up Canelo, trying to neutralize Canelo's like inside body punching, Canelo just shoved him off and was like, we're not playing this game. And I figured, that would be one of Callum's best opportunities was, put a little weight on Canelo, tire him out as much as you can. But unfortunately, Canelo wasn't giving him that opportunity. And all we saw was Callum Smith kind of just being worn down throughout the whole fight. Past round 8, I was like, dude, this is kind of a wrap. He's just getting beat up at this point. I was wondering whether Callum Smith's corner was going to call the fight.
Yeah.
But he went for the full 12. I guess they saw something or were hoping that Callum could rally at the end, but I didn't see too much enthusiasm from Smith.
Yeah, he fought gallantly. He definitely insisted on going out on his shield, but it was getting to that point where you were wondering whether or not the corner or anyone else was going to step in because he simply wasn't winning rounds. Canelo, who came out with 11 out of 12 rounds on 2 judges, and somehow one judge had him losing 3 rounds. It's a little bit marginal. He wins easily, and what he indicated to Chris Mannix in the post-fight interview is that his main intention is to unify the belts at 168 pounds, which leads us into plenty of good fights. Unfortunately, for some people, not Triple G, who also won this weekend.
I'd be curious to see. I mean, we have Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant is now scheduled to fight Caleb Truax to defend his IBF title. I've seen Anthony Durrell's name kind of thrown out there, but also Benavidez.
Yeah, Benavidez is probably the best fight you could make right now because he is the biggest guy you could match someone up with at 168 pounds.
Yeah, and I'd be really intrigued to watch that fight. I mean, if they told me Canelo Alvarez was fighting Benavidez in the next 6 months, I mean, it didn't even need to be David Benavidez. I'll still probably watch.
I mean, hell, Edgar Berlanga is saying that he would have stopped Callum Smith within 6 rounds. I'll give him a year or two, and maybe he's a viable opponent for Canelo, although that's a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, the idea of fighting Triple G against, of course, I think the commentators on DAZN are forced to ask Canelo about Triple G just because of contractual interests with Triple G being a DAZN fighter. Canelo kind of laughs it off. And that's kind of his status quo response when asked about Triple G. I mean, I can't be one of the only people that think he's done what he can do against Triple G, and there's really not too much more he can show in a third fight. I mean, I understand that both fights were very close. There are some people, including myself, who thought Triple G won both fights. But in terms of momentum, one guy is going up and one guy's going down.
Yeah, I'm not too inclined. I figured the Triple G Canelo third fight has kind of set sail at this point. I wouldn't be disappointed if it happens, of course.
Yeah.
I think everyone's kind of looking forward to it if it does. Uh, However, there are other opportunities to see Canelo Alvarez kind of test himself in the ring, whether that's against Benavidez, Caleb Plant, or even possibly within the next year, like you said, Berlanga. I'd watch that fight. I mean, I'd watch them spar, but it's not, I guess, a foregone conclusion. However, if it happens, great. If not, meh.
Yeah, that's kind of my impression as well. And I think Triple G's performance on Friday, for some people, I think a lot of diehard Triple G fans took that as a resurgence in the old Triple G. I don't know how they came up with that. I mean, he won against a highly overmatched opponent. He scored multiple knockdowns, but it didn't really mean too much to me. And it wasn't the kind of performance that got me super hyped that Triple G is going to bring something new to the table in a third fight against Canelo that he didn't in the 24 rounds they fought previously.
Part of me wonders, based off of GGG's performance, I didn't, like you said, I didn't see it as much of a resurgence of his former self, right? Was he in shape? Yeah. Did he do what he had to do? Of course. Part of me wonders, though, from his performance, is he drained at 160 at this point? He's 38, and boxing is very taxing on the body, especially the weight drain. Part of me wonders, could he just bump up to 168? But then does it look like he's chasing Canelo Alvarez at that point?
Yeah, it didn't really. It's always befuddled me a little bit because he's had opportunities 5, 6, 7 years ago when Carl Froch's name was being tossed around as a potential fight, although that was more, in my opinion, Froch's doing than Triple G's for that fight not happening. But he's shown inclination to fight at 168 for a very long time, and now, as you mentioned, with the age, I'm confused why he hasn't moved up yet. Because really, at 160, he's got fights lined up for him in the future that aren't such great matchups for him, in my opinion. I mean, Demetrius Andrade, a lot of people probably wouldn't be excited to see that fight. Andrade is not super entertaining fighter to watch. And then you got Jamal Charlo, who's associated with PBC and is also a very dangerous fight, probably a fight that he wouldn't win, in my opinion. I think Triple G's best way to go out, sail off into the sunset, is at 168, and I think that's where his future lies. Although he is a real stickler about keeping his title at 160 and scoring as many title defenses as possible. He's kind of like a Marvin Hagler type or a Bernard Hopkins with the sheer number of title defenses and performances they made at 160. Although even Hopkins moved up eventually.
Yeah, it does leave me to wonder what is going through Golovkin's mind, because the opportunities were there in the past for 168. They're definitely here now for 168. I wonder if it's just based on optics, or like you said, is he chasing title defenses?
Yeah.
It kind of makes it sad because Golovkin, back when he was a younger man, was that hot upcoming, like the Kazakh, like thunder, right? Like the monster was coming up. No one wanted to fight him. But now here it is. It's kind of like he's a blip, kind of not necessarily being forgotten. He's still, still a champion. However, everyone seems to be focused a little bit more on Canelo's career now, just because the guy is moving up and still winning in impressive fashion.
Yeah, Canelo is. It would be no question that Canelo would get the massive lion's share of the purse if he fought Triple G again, for all the pride that Triple G took in securing such great numbers in their first fight, such great purse splits. Canelo would get so much more, and you would get the impression that Triple G is chasing the money, chasing greatness by fighting Canelo. But it would still be an interesting fight. I think Triple G, to his credit and his durability and his strength, he still has certain elements of his style that are suited towards giving Canelo a little bit tougher fight than maybe a Callum Smith. I mean, Triple G doesn't naturally fight on the back foot like a Callum Smith would. He's more prone to pushing Canelo back, although he did less of that in the second fight. I think it would be an interesting technical fight to some extent, but I think Canelo would definitely put a lot of distance between them that he wasn't able to do in the first and second fight, and I think he would win the fight, and I don't think the odds would be very close either. So yeah, we have Canelo versus Triple G3, a possibility for 2021. Not the most exciting fight I think you can make for Canelo. I'd love to see him fight a Caleb Plant or especially a David Benavidez, a guy that is so much bigger than him and would pose a challenge in and of himself. Or maybe even some guys at 175 if Canelo is bold enough.
Yeah, I would really, one other name that keeps getting thrown out there is Beterbiev.
Yeah.
For Canelo, and I don't necessarily know if that's a fight that I want Canelo taking. Definitely would be. It definitely is an intriguing matchup. But I guess Canelo will know if he feels ready or comfortable to bump up to that level of opposition at the light heavyweight.
He talks about legacy fights. I can't imagine a better legacy for Canelo Alvarez than going up to 175 again and beating the baddest, strongest man at 175 in Artur Beterbiev. I really can't.
That is true. Part of me is wondering, is that something that Canelo's camp is really, really gunning for? Because he poses such a huge threat to Canelo Alvarez. Definitely an intriguing matchup, but like you said, a legacy level fight, that would definitely be one of them. I guess Canelo's camp will let us know when they feel ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, Beterbiev, he's got a fight coming up, I believe, in early 2021. We'll see how he looks. He hasn't fought he hasn't fought at all in 2020, so it's been a while. His last fight was his breakthrough performance against Vosdik in October 2019. I was at that fight. That was when he really showed people what he's made of. Definitely want to see him fight before he goes up against a guy like Canelo anyways, if that fight ever gets made. But some pretty interesting fights for 2021 coming up, and a few of which I wanted to mention, one of which got announced last night by Eddie Hearn, Chocolatito versus Juan Francisco Estrada 2. This is a fight that's more than 8 years in the making, a rematch that's more than 8 years overdue, really. And they're finally getting it on again. What is your immediate impression of this fight getting made?
Christmas came early.
Yeah.
The minute that Eddie Hearn decided to finally announce it after a little bit of the side conversation that he was having, I think social media exploded. Everyone was like, finally, Chocolatito Estrada 2's here. We've been waiting 8 years for this rematch. So looking at it, that just shows the potential for 2021, hopefully post-pandemic sooner than later. Boxing definitely, is on the up and up if we can make those contracts happen, especially this one, which is such an exciting matchup.
Yeah. It's kind of like I've always thought of this matchup as kind of like a Thrilla in Manila Part 2, in that both guys have given just enough to bring out a different type of rematch amongst themselves. Not the technical masterpiece per se that they put on in 2012. Still a highly technical fight, but something that's a little more brutal. Potentially, although the bad blood is not quite there between these two men. They aren't quite as quick. They don't have the same reflexes they did in 2012. We might see a different type of fight that might make it even more exciting, which is one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to this fight.
Yeah, hopefully, it depending, I guess, on if everything remaining constant and the fight does definitely, continue forward. At this point, I'm not holding my breath on anything potentially messing anything up. But with Chocolatito and Estrada, will this be not necessarily a bowing out fight, but depending on the verdict, depending on how the fight goes, like you said, this is one of those possibly a Thrilla Manila 2 fight. But I guess depending on the wear and tear that these two warriors have gone throughout their careers, will this fight be one to retire someone? I don't think so. But, just knowing the amount of leather that these two will be throwing each other in March just makes me look forward to the spring.
I think if it's going to retire someone, I think it would be Chocolatito. I think he's shown considerably more wear and tear in his last fight. They both look sensational, but Chocolatito, he's definitely slowed down. His endurance is still there. His reflexes just aren't. And Estrada also took a lot of punches against Carlos Cuadras in his last fight, pulled it out like a champion would. But yeah, both of these guys are definitely not the same fighters they were in 2012, and it's hard to be because they were both some of the best fighters in the world back then. They're still great fighters. This fight is to unify belts at super flyweight, and if Estrada wins this fight, he might go out sailing in the sunset as being one of the few fighters in history that have beaten every fighter they've ever stepped in the ring with. He avenged his loss with Srisaket Sorangvisai. He avenged a loss earlier in his career against a little-name opponent. And the only other fighter to defeat him is Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. So he's got a lot riding on this fight in terms of his legacy as well.
Definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah. Earlier in 2021, January 2nd, we have a very interesting fight with Ryan Garcia and Luke Campbell. A lot of people are thinking Ryan Garcia is just going to run right through him because he's Ryan Garcia. Eddie Hearn is one of the few that, well, by virtue of his promotional association with Campbell, is predicting the upset. How do you see this fight going?
I am more privy to Luke Campbell's skill and his level of experience, being on such a big stage, fighting both Lomachenko and Jorge Linares.
Yeah.
And I'm putting my eggs, I guess, in that basket, just due to Ryan Garcia. I couldn't tell if you were to stop me in the middle of the street and ask me who Ryan Garcia has fought. I think I can only name two opponents, which leaves me to question, like, maturity level of experience, obviously, in the ring at such a large stage. Even though he does get a lot of publicity, he's with the currently with Canelo's and Reynoso team, so he's getting high quality level sparring. To my understanding, his training camp, it's top tier. But I just don't see Garcia having enough skills to hold off Luke Campbell.
That's interesting. That was the exact position I took, more or less, with Teofimo Lopez against Lomachenko, is that he just wasn't in with the same level of opposition, wasn't experienced enough to make the adjustments. But I think true class, if Garcia is what they say he is, true class can prevail in this kind of a fight. Luke Campbell is certainly the guy to bring different elements out of Ryan Garcia, and I'm hoping he does. I hope this isn't another first-round knockout, second-round knockout, because Garcia has the power to get some crazy things done against a fighter like Luke Campbell, potentially, who in his own right does take a very good shot. But Ryan Garcia is a monstrous puncher. But I hope he has to really show his class and make adjustments and defeat Luke Campbell. I can't really predict a winner in this fight because I just haven't seen enough from Ryan Garcia. I used to default to guys that didn't have enough experience, but looked good, passed the eye test. I would pick against them. Right now, I guess I've just been proven wrong from the Teofimo Lopez fight, that I'm just, there's just too much I haven't seen. And if a guy is confident enough and believes in himself enough, anything could happen. We're going to hopefully see what Ryan Garcia is made out of in January 2nd of this coming year. But right before the end of 2020, we have a very interesting fight as well with Kazuto Ioka and Kosai Tanaka. A brilliant fight. Tanaka moving up in weight. Ioka, he's one of the best fighters at super flyweight. I really hope he fights the winner of Chocolatito and Juan Francisco Estrada in their rematch. I mean, I think both of these guys have the potential to be the future of those weight divisions. These fights really are highly intriguing. I really wish the higher weight divisions would put together some of these round robin type fights as frequently as some of these lower divisions. It just get it done so much easier.
I think everyone would agree with that statement. I had no idea that these two were even fighting, just going to show that I don't know necessarily much about the Eastern area. Even though I did live in China for a year, I didn't follow the Japanese boxing circuit. And so now that you brought this to my attention, it's something I'm looking forward to watching on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, no, it's a tremendous fight. I hope a network picks it up. Even if a named network doesn't, I'm sure there'll be plenty of ways to stream it. I highly recommend everybody look into both of these fighters. They're both tremendous talents. Tanaka being undefeated, and Ioka, his only loss, I believe, coming to Donnie Nietes, who's a tremendous fighter. One of two losses, maybe. But this is a really, really good fight, and a great way to kick off or finish a dreadful year for many reasons. But for boxing, I think boxing's done pretty well in rebounding more than people thought it would post-pandemic.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think since the summer started, when promotional companies were starting to figure out, all right, how are we going to construct these shows? Top Rank had the bubble. Now they're allowing spectators into the venues over in Texas, right at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
They figured it out. They pulled it off, which is great. I love it. And so hopefully this trend continues into 2021, especially with the matchups that we're seeing being materialized. I say, boxing's not going anywhere. So all those people who are saying boxing is dead, silence.
Yeah, I mean, people need to realize that there's boxing and then there's exhibitions, which isn't a sport. Of course, I'm talking about thou which shall not be mentioned, Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. That is not boxing, clearly. Boxing, the sanctioned fights are truly, some of these great matchups are truly starting to materialize. I would love to see Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua get made in the first half of next year. We'll see if that happens. Even if it doesn't, guys like Usyk and Joshua might produce some good fights. This is a pretty strong period for boxing, and I give it a lot of credit, like you do, for being able to rebound under very extreme conditions. Hopefully the pandemic subsides in the next 6 months or so, hopefully, and we can see some of these great fights be fought in front of a live audience, because some of these fights, I'm just imagining if Teofimo Lopez and Lomachenko was fought in front of the Garden, what kind of a spectacle that would be. These are some historical performances that we've seen this year, and unfortunately they haven't been performed in front of the type of venue that it really deserves. So hopefully we see that next year.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. All right, Jeff, have a good rest of your day. Really appreciated you being on the show today. And have a great Christmas, New Year's, whatever you celebrate, and I hope the best.
Thanks for having me, and same to you, Alden.
Thank you. All right, that wraps it up for this episode of the Fight City Podcast. I'm your host, Alden Chodash, and we'll see you next time.